I don't want to live in a country where there's one undocumented person. In the 3 years I was the mayor, discovered 600 buildings.
Joining us today on the State of the Nation, we have the former Mayor of Johannesburg and now leader of Action SA, Mr. Herman Mashaba. Herman, welcome back to the State of the Nation.
No, thank you so much, Mike, and your team for always giving us this platform.
Oh, and you always make yourself available, and that's fantastic. But this is under fairly miserable circumstances that we sit here and have this discussion. In the past, we've spoken a lot about politics. We've spoken a lot about the progress of Action SA. Politics is about people and the government that's meant to be the custodian for people. And of course, it all goes horribly wrong when a city is being run as badly as Johannesburg, ultimately leads to the disaster that we saw recently where the building caught fire and people died.
Mike, I'm sure I think I can't put people inside me, but South Africans, fortunate enough, they are aware how I fought for the reclaiming of those buildings. I used to wake people up because I realized South Africans were fast asleep to the terrible potential disaster to happen. Because I can tell you that particular building, which I did not know of, because in the 3 years I was the mayor, discovered 600 buildings, so I did not know specifically about this one. But I can tell you, I led a lot of raids in the city, and I can tell you there are buildings, as I'm talking to you right now, which are in worse situation. Actually, we with more people, and some of them we are actually gradually killing people health-wise, because you just go into this building, you just want to get out because you can't obviously take the smell and the decay. And here we have got hundreds of people living there, and people paying rental of 1,000 to 1,500 for just a bed. If ever they're lucky, there'll be illegal connections to water and so forth, but no proper ablution facilities. And human trafficking. I remember a few cases with subs where they needed special equipment to actually break into those buildings. And then you break in those buildings, you find hundreds of young people coming from all over Africa and so forth, made to work in this, I don't know whether to call them factories or what, because you know, South Africa, it's a dumping place of counterfeit goods, expired goods. It looks like any place in the world where they've got expired goods they cannot sell to their own people. They dump it in South Africa, and they know they've got the politicians here on their payroll. Because what South Africans fail to see, and I've tried to highlight them, unfortunately, our politicians in the ANC are to a large extent behind this hijacking syndicates. It is for that reason you can see the law enforcement agencies refusing to prosecute.
Because if they have to prosecute, soon enough one of their own is going to come out in that prosecution.
Well, I always use this as an example. You remember the former mayor Dlamini once said, if you touch the ANC, the smaller than a skeleton. I can tell you it's not smaller than a skeleton. These are big elephants of skeletons, big. So the reason why our law enforcement agencies used to refuse to give me the necessary cooperation up to today, including actually reporting some of the cases personally as a mayor of the city of Johannesburg to President Cyril Ramaphosa. In 2018, during the June 16 memorial, I sat next to him in Soweto. I took advantage of saying, Mr. President, I'm not getting cooperation from from your law enforcement. 2018 or 2019, but one of the years. I said, I'm not getting joy and support from law enforcement agencies. I'm sitting with massive cases, 34 billion rands of fraud and corruption cases. And you know what he said to me? He says, would you mind to send them some of the cases to me? When I got to the office the very same day, I emailed him 60 of the cases. I got Jiffies and General Sibia to give me cases which were as clear as daylight. And they'd already done proper investigation. They just needed to prosecute. Even up to today, it's how many years later, the president has not even acknowledged receipt of my email. There's not even, and I was the mayor at the time. At least right now, if they don't respond, they would regard me as politicking. I was the mayor of the city facing massive challenges, and I brought this to his attention that some of his colleagues in parliament and his cabinet are involved in these activities. And probably thought I'm talking nonsense. He's not prepared, like he said. He'd rather be seen as a weak leader than destroyed, to be the president, to be known to be the one responsible for the destruction of ANC. So, we must accept. That's what he said from his own mouth, that he does not want to really be known to be the president to destroy the ANC. We, as a president, would rather see him as a weak leader, as happy to live with that.
Yeah, and that's why he's probably put people into his cabinet, not just still keeping their jobs somewhere on the political scene, but people like Zizi Kodwa, Becky Tele. These people are all compromised by the Zondo Commission. These are people that we know, Gwedi Mantashe, who have actually benefited.
So, I mean, Mike, what is actually quite painful about, and I think I want your viewers and South Africans to know that these criminal syndicates, they started in the city of Johannesburg. They're now going into the suburbs. So people in the suburbs today, they think they're safe. These guys, they've already started hijacking properties all over the country. So whether you're going to be living in Morningside or in Randburg, I can tell you they are coming. As long as we're going to allow a criminal syndicate to really be the government, you and I are not going to really be protected.
Now, Herman, I want to just sort of circle back to when you were the mayor. And I just want to find out, because obviously, there's been a couple of forms of defense that the ANC has employed. They're obviously running the city now. We know what kind of job they're doing, and we'll discuss the politics later. But they've made a big deal about NGOs protecting these stolen businesses, these stolen buildings, and the fact that the police can't do their work. They keep on throwing the NGO card at us. To what degree did NGOs stop you from doing your job?
Look, I think NGOs from my side, the only thing that I found unpalatable, and I had issues with them, when they were calling me xenophobic. I found, and I took this seriously and with exception, because I think when I was raising the issue of undocumented foreign national, that was a fact. They would really have debates with me around saying, because I was part of some of the raids. I couldn't be in all of them, but I was part of the raids, because in the beginning, the police were reluctant, saying some of the buildings are too dangerous. And I said, no building or area in the city of Johannesburg, when I'm the mayor, it's going to be a no-go area. Yeah. So I used to lead the raids myself, because I said, I'm not going to be scared of criminals in my city, in the city where I've got the constitutional responsibility to 6 million of our people. So, so when this whole thing really started spreading, that's when with the raids, we discover up to 80% of the residents would be undocumented foreign nationals. Fact, they will argue with me to say, no, I'm exaggerating the numbers, and that according to their records, they are about 25 to 26%. And I said, but don't you think 25, 26% it's already high?
Yeah.
I don't want to live in a country where there's one undocumented person. Honestly, and I really mean it. I don't want to live, knowingly, I don't want to live in a country where there's one undocumented person. So I said, we really dealing with the wrong person, including, remember, the ANC themselves reported me to the South African Human Rights Commission. But when I eventually managed to pass the Inner City Rejuvenation Project through council, how I was going to run the process within GFIS with General Sipia, we set up a unit that must deal with hijacked buildings to do the audit of those buildings. So they did the audit of those buildings. Then once we've got a sizable number of buildings, I'll take the report to council to say, council, here are the buildings we've expropriated. Either we couldn't find the owners, or they owe the city a lot of money that they're unable to pay for the city services. Asking for this council a report to say, let me offer them to the private sector to build affordable accommodation for our poor people. And then obviously council will then pass the report. Then it then goes back to JPC, Johannesburg Property Company. Then they'll then start doing the necessary paperwork for the private sector to tender for these proposals. What my requirement was that we give those properties to the private sector. They must just tell us, here's the property, tell us how much you're going to invest, tell us how many units you're going to build, and how many jobs you'll create in the process, and then tell us how many years you want us to give us at least, so 30 years, 50 years, and so forth. And then once, obviously, with the JPC put together the necessary paperwork, I'll then take it to council, then for council to allow me to the city to advertise. Then we'll advertise it to the private sector. Then the private sector will give us a proposal. Once, obviously, we've got preferred bidders, before we award, I will then take it to council again for council approval. By the time I left, and okay, what is also very important, part of what I've committed to the to the private sector was that, guys, the only time we will evict, because we had all these NGOs which said, before you can evict people from a property, you must find them alternative accommodation. Part of the calls for interest was that you give us the proposal, us as a city, when you are ready to build, let's say a month or so before, we will then find alternative accommodation. Because I said, I don't want to make a mistake. I have a building hijacked. You evict people without any plan. A week later, a new group of people have occupied it, and you must find them an alternative. I said, no, we leave them until the private sector is ready to build. And that's what we committed. By the time I left, we had already in 2019 awarded 154 buildings with an investment by the private sector of 32 billion rands to create 14,000 housing units, creating 22,000 permanent jobs during and after construction. Yeah. Unfortunately for me, I still had 2 years to go. I had committed, because we had identified already 600, just over 600 properties. I had committed to the residents of Joburg, it's there in writing, that I will award, I'm going to give away a minimum of 100 properties a year. Unfortunately, it so happened at around about August 2019, come across secret meetings to have a motion of no confidence against me.
One of the things that may have led to that motion, right, is another role player in this thing that clearly must be highlighted, because I've got a long memory of this, and you were there, and that was the role of the media. the media were relentless in going after you.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Every time you led a raid, and I'm not talking about the SABC, I'm talking about especially the private media. Every time it happened, I thought they were going to, on 702, I thought they were throwing birthday parties. Every time you did a raid, every time it got high profile, there was every slur against you.
In fact,
this
let me tell you,
xenophobic guy who doesn't care.
Not only the xenophobic being criticized, I used to be called a brutal person, getting rid of experienced people. I'm sure you remember that one. Because when I took over, one of the first things I did was to do the skills audit, because I knew about the cadre deployment. People who were in jobs, not because of what they knew, because of who they knew. So what I did skills audit. So a lot of them jump ship before the skills audit were done. Some of them, they stayed and I got rid of them. Some of them would move them to other areas. And all of a sudden, I'm being attacked by the media that I'm getting rid of people. I don't know how many times I used to tell them, guys, South Africa, I'm not getting rid of experienced people. I'm getting rid of experienced criminals. I said, I don't need experienced criminals and thieves.
Because it's not to excuse the way your term as mayor ended, but it was almost got to the point where it was almost unbearable. Every day people would go after you because you were trying to apply the bylaws, and those are laws.
Yeah, no, including, remember at one stage I had to go to iPad to go and lay charge against Benin Tlemeza. You remember Benin Tlemeza was the head of the Hawks, where one time he called all the Gauteng detectives to say, all the cases of the city of Johannesburg, please, they must come to his office before they're investigated. So fortunately enough, I got to know about this, and I felt with the legal people, this is actually the breaking the law. So I went to IPAD to go and report Benin Tlemeza for interfering with the law. Unfortunately, nothing happened to him. I see last week he's now opening a new political party with Isma Hashul.
Yeah, I'm sure you're quivering in your boots because Isma Hashul started his own party. But yeah, let's move on to one of the serious things, which is the kind of breakdown in basic law, right? Which is not, a speed limit is a speed limit. The speed limit says 80. It doesn't say 80 or 80-ish. It says 80. That's the law. Now, we do have a problem in this country, thanks to the support of the ANC. ZANU keeps on winning elections in Zim, even when they don't win elections,
in fact,
right?
I don't know if I've issued a statement when I heard the president that he's going to the inauguration of Mnangagwa. I said, you've got to be a shameless leader to be associated with such people. But he's there now as I'm talking to you, which it's a disgrace to my country, and I just want South Africans to know that Cyril Ramaphosa does not represent me with this relationship with ZANU-PF.
Yeah. What was really troubling, though, was, and now we're moving away from the city of Joburg and the fire incident, but it was really telling that you had political interference from South Africa in the election. You had the Secretary General of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, basically saying that Chamisa is a puppet of the West and he can't be elected, and if he elects it, it's fraud. And I mean, can you even understand what's going on? Because I can't.
Well, Mike, I'm sure you read attacks against me every day. I'm one of the biggest house niggers the world has ever seen. So I think we must be very careful as human beings not to be distracted by criminals, by insulting us. I've got a thick skin. I got into this job with a full knowledge of what to expect. Do I enjoy this job? This is not the job to be enjoyed. This is the job to save this country. I'm not prepared to see South Africa go in the Zimbabwean route, and I said I did nothing. This is a brutal job. I tell you, honestly, I hate this job and I hate it with a passion. But it's a rewarding job. It's a job that someone must do it. And if not me, who? I'm not prepared to run away from this country. I can tell you, and I want South Africans to know, I'm going to do everything in my power to ensure that we can democratically remove the ANC from government and expose their corruption and their criminal activity. I'm not going to run away, because running away for me, I remember a few years, about 2 years ago, when I was asking my daughter to come back from the States. I said, my girl, you know, you can really live comfortably. You've got the best education. You can never be without a job in the States. But one thing for sure, you will always, the world will look at you as South Africa. Like, look at Zimbabweans. Every time we look at Zimbabweans successful, some of them here in South Africa, at the end of the day, they're Zimbabweans. I don't know how they sleep when they see their own people suffering the way they do. So I don't want to really be part of that, because I think life is not about short term. It's not about today, that I'm going to make money today. I don't worry about the future generations. So I'm going to fight for this country until the day when God decides otherwise.
But now, Herman, it's starting to feel a little bit to me like there's almost a sense of resignation within the population of South Africa. We're almost beaten to death, it feels like. There's not the kind of outrage. There was greater outrage in international news to the fire than there was in South Africa. For 3 days it was on the front page of the New York Times. I don't think it was on the front page of South African newspaper.
I don't know how many live interviews with CNN, BBC. Being ashamed of my own country, that and I said, as far as I'm concerned, if I was living in a civilized society, you know, what happened in the city of Johannesburg, 77 or so people were killed. I strongly believe people like that should really be charged for culpable homicide, because this is not an accident. I've refused for anyone to tell me that's an accident. It's it's like Mike, I sit with you, allow you to finish a bottle of whiskey and get into a car in Joburg, and then you wanna go drive to Durban, and I let you drive, and then somewhere along the line you get an accident, and you know, something happens to you. It was an accident bound to happen. All of us as South Africans, and I think it is for that reason, as it said last week, to say, as South Africans, as much as we want to put our heads in the sand, we cannot tell me we did not know the situation in the city of Johannesburg with these hijacked buildings and the living deplorable conditions of people.
Yeah.
It happened in one building. I can tell you there's more than up to 200 buildings or so with worse situation than that one that caught the fire.
And of course, that comes hot on the heels of the road blowing up in in the middle of town in Bree Street. That comes back to the fire at the Charlotte Makeke Hospital.
You remember when there was a mayor, I think, was it 2018 or so, when one day the GRA called me in my office to show me the state of the M2.
Yes.
That Mayor, we've got a challenge. This matter we've been bringing to the attention of previous mayors before you. This the freeway needs immediate attention. I can tell you, when they called me, I went. I did not know what to expect. What I saw there, immediately called the city manager. Said, "City manager, wherever you are, please come through, because we've got to make serious decisions." And obviously we took him through, and I said, I'm making the statement tonight that within 24 hours we're closing this freeway. I know the implications is going to be a short-term implications, but I said I don't want to be held responsible that I knew about the state of these bridges and I did nothing.
Yeah.
So I had to. It was a tough decision.
Yeah.
But I had to make that decision, and I knew it was going to be a huge inconvenience to our residents. But we can imagine if I had not done anything and we had lost our lives. So this is just to really give as an example of the apathy sometimes of people, because we look at issues from a short-term point of view. People are scared of democracy. Captains of industry, ordinary people, I mean, I hear now there are businesses that wants to help the ANC for, to fix the country. I'm saying to myself, what on earth is happening? Captains of industry wanting to assist the criminal organization to remain in power.
Yeah.
Then I'm saying no. Then I don't know. Something it's just not really right.
To the loyal viewers of this channel, they would know I've been on and on and on about it, because I view their action as a betrayal. I think it's unpatriotic that they should be in the election period helping the government. That has caused the problems that they're doing. And actually, I've got to say, pretty soon, please stay tuned to the State of the Nation, because in the next couple of days I'm going to have one of those businessmen here and ask him what motivates them to try and save the ANC when the ANC seems to be doing everything wrong. Which brings us to the greater political question now. Obviously, we recently had Gayton McKenzie. Sadly, we recorded the interview. We'll say sadly, the fire happened in the first place, but we did record the interview the day before the outbreak of the fire. And to some people, governance seems to be a bit of a joke, a bit of a party, a bit of a jobs for pals, a fun thing. It seems like they're having a lot more fun than you are, because they're not really trying to govern for the best of the citizens. I have put it to the Patriotic Alliance a number of times, at our live event, where I called them out on this. They keep on blaming the other parties and talking about everything else but supporting the ANC. I accused Gayton McKenzie of the magician's trick where, watch here, but it's this hand that's doing all the work. They keep on moaning about the opposition parties, especially the DA, who are not without fault, but they're not the guys in charge of the country. They are not the ones that are running the country. You recently participated in the multi-party dialogue that took place, the multi-party charter. And we were all very hopeful that was going to yield results. Some papers were signed or some agreements were made.
Some serious agreements. I mean, serious agreements that has got serious implications for the 60 million South Africans, because those agreements are not about you and I. They're about the 60 million South Africans. We are giving a commitment that we are going to do everything possible to unseat the ANC so that we can start a new chapter for our country.
There's been no shortage of, once again, our friends in the media who are telling you what a ridiculous idea this is, because they calculate the Action SA portion of the vote at best 2% because you haven't participated in the election yet. But anyway, they desperately seem to be, along with the rest of business, absolutely dedicated to keeping the ANC in power. I presume that's so that they can keep their control over certain sectors of the economy, to the detriment of the rest of us. But you've had this agreement, it looks promising, you seem to be on a similar page. I wouldn't say the same, at least you're reading the same book. You may be not on the same page. And, we're all very hopeful that this coalition should yield some results, but there's two big issues here, aren't there? The one big issue being there's no doubt that the Patriotic Alliance are playing both sides of the game,
and they've been playing those games from day one.
They seem to be deflecting by saying it's all the fault of the DA, who are not blameless. What does one make of the Patriotic Alliance? Are they in? Are they good guys? Are they bad guys?
On the sidelines of that convention over the 2 days, on the last day, Honorable Thabisa from the IFP engaged me that we must engage John Steenhuisen from the DA to see if we can save the city of Johannesburg from the ANC EFF. So I said to him, Mr. Thabisa, if I speak to John, he's not going to accept. I said, if you want to speak to him, it's up to you. You know my view. I'd rather have to deal with a complex coalition as long as the ANC EFF are out. On the last day, just before, as we finished the proceedings, before we go and sign, Thabisa called me, says, let's go and talk to John. I've spoken, he said to me, he's already spoken to John. John is willing to talk. And broke the news to John that I am also keen to talk about Johannesburg, John indicated to us as guys, I'm afraid my party's position has always been clear. However, I hear you. Please allow me to go and talk to the FedEx. But in the meantime, the following week, I'll get a technical team from Gauteng to engage with this discussion while I'm talking to FedEx. I then said to John, I said, John, obviously we don't have time on our side. As you are aware, Action SA 6 weeks ago at the time had already put in a motion, and that motion was coming to council and was already accepted by the programming committee. So we don't have time on our side. I said, John, do you mind if in the meantime we ask Kone Mulde, who's got a good relationship with Gayton, to engage Gayton if he's happy to sign our agreement. John said, please let him go ahead. That was Thursday night in front of the cameras. We all signed and everything. Never heard from the DA. Our team, Michael from our side, Kone Mulde from the Freedom Front Plus, engaged Gayton. Gayton was happy, including Gayton and his team. From what the Corne and Michael gave us the feedback, and even to the DA, to say, actually, these guys are saying they're happy to sign the agreement, including supporting the DA in other municipalities in the Western Cape to remove the ANC. But then, at the same time, they're trying to really then engage the DA technical team in Gauteng. All the time, the guys said, no, we don't have the mandate, so we can't meet. Saturday, I was at a strat session. Saturday morning, I was at a strat session preparing for our policy conference. I received a letter from John Steenhuisen, long letter, to tell us DA is not interested to talk to the DA, to the PA. DA is not prepared to really be in a messy coalition. DA is not going to support our motion. They've got a counter proposal. Is that they're going to come out with their own motion to dissolve council. My goodness. I can tell you, while I was still busy reading this long letter, I'm in a meeting, strat session, I start getting media queries about the DA's letter. That's when I realized, yeah, I'm dealing in another world here. I never really thought our politics will go to that level. And because I'm asking myself, John was not under obligation. He did indicate to Thabisa and I that he's going to consult with his party structures because they've had issues with PA. Now, you can imagine someone who just less than a week earlier had signed an agreement with us, just to really call us in a meeting, a Zoom meeting, to say, guys, I've really tried. Unfortunately, my party is not interested. He sends a letter to me. Before even sending the letter to me, he puts the media onto me. I've got to really, while I'm still reading and consuming this letter, I'm already getting media inquiries. That's when I realized,
once again,
it's a very painful environment.
It's got to be said to everybody, you know, we've always had a good relationship with the DA and had them on many times. They have flatly refused to come on to discuss this idea of theirs of getting the whole council squashed and we have to all go back to the... It stands absolutely no chance of success.
Well, you know, two-thirds majority.
Two-thirds majority, yeah. You know, it's highly unlikely that it's going to happen, and it seems like a motion that was just put in place to shut the process down and keep...
Can I tell you something also that we found as Action SA a bit disturbing? Obviously, then the council went through. I had to go and talk to our caucus myself. on Monday when this whole thing happened. I said to our team, withdraw this motion. There's no point in putting a motion, causing havoc in council, knowing that you don't have the support. Rather, we withdraw it. And some of our colleagues in caucus were not happy that we are interfering too much with them. I had to stop everything. I went to go and address caucus to give them the bigger picture, to say, look, there's no point in proceeding with this motion because we don't have the support. And then they asked me, then what do we do about the DA motion? I said, there's no point in voting with authority. There's no chance you're going to be embarrassing yourself. I said, no, guys, don't even sing. Just fold your arms because that motion, even if you can vote with the DA, you're going to be a laughing stock. Yeah. So rather than DA proceed, maybe they've got another plan that you don't know of. Well, but now, after their motion failed, which was going to fail anyway, they come out with a very scathing attack against Action SA, that we voted against the motion. But Freedom Front Plus, IFP, ACDP also did not vote. They abstained. Yeah. But in the attack, they only attack Action SA. I mean, I'm saying to myself, but I don't know. So it looks like, I think, DA has got another agenda. It's just I really wish they can one day share it with the world and the South Africans.
Yeah, and certainly with us, we give them absolute that chair. I'll kick Herman out in a second for the DA to come and explain what it is that they're trying to achieve by keeping this coalition, this ANC, EFF, Patriotic Alliance coalition in power. And we can see that this is no longer a game. People are starting, this is now causing serious problems. People are getting killed because of negligence. The blood is not just on the hands of the ANC and the EFF and the PA. They deserve some of the blood on their hands, but the blood must also flow the other side where we could have done something about it. Let's look forward, Herman, and give us an update as we wind down here. We're in an election season. This is now... We know it's an election season. How do we know it? Because the ANC starts blaming everything on apartheid.
Oh my goodness.
That's when we know that it's election season, right? And now it's completely off the hook. So obviously it's coordinated. At the same time, we saw Cyril Ramaphosa blame apartheid for not having town planners in Pampiersdorp, and we've heard the Minister of Transport blaming a decision in 1977 for the collapse of the railways last year, and Chavani complaining about apartheid for something else. So we're obviously into election season, we know it. You now have something that is a little bit concerning, I would imagine, and that's a completely lethargic, beaten up voter by the looks of things. Maybe it's just the terrible life we're living in Johannesburg that makes us feel so negative. What is happening on the ground? Are you finding people with the appetite to actually do something? I mean, I know you're trying, but your success depends on people supporting you.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And one thing for sure is you can undermine us at your own risk, like they did in the past. While we're going through these turbulences, we're not giving up on our country. We run a massive campaign to register the youth. As I'm talking to you, we're launching branches as I'm talking to you throughout the country. Next week, from the 12th to the 14th, we're going into a policy conference that is going to be revolutionary. I'm actually proud of policy decisions that we're going to offer to the South Africans, so that next year when they vote for us, they know what we stand for. I'm excited. That's something, it's a kind of country I voted for in 1994 that I thought Mandela and the ANC were going to produce. I can tell you we now have to start all over again. So yeah, I'm excited, tired, but looking forward to this policy conference so that we can give South Africans hope and a reason to go out and vote. And because one thing that I make it clear to South Africans, particularly the black youth, the future of this country, it's in their hands. They're the ones who must decide whether they're going to destroy this country or not. Because I know they are not voting because they think they are punishing the ANC, and we're getting them to understand by you not going out to vote, you are actually voting for the ANC, and we are proving to them. But I think the reception has been overwhelming. I'm encouraged, I'm inspired to do this job because people are responding very positively. Every day, working, engaging with the people, sleepless nights. This campaign, it's important. So, yeah, we just have to then wait and see what happens. The one thing that when the IEC counts the vote, they don't count the votes of what the analysts always are saying. Because I remember with Action SA in 2021, I want to come out across any analyst who gave us the chance. The best that they ever gave us, one analyst was that Action SA, if they get 3 councillors in the city of Johannesburg, they'll be lucky. They would have done well, not lucky, they would have done well. We ended up with 44 councillors. And one thing that makes me immensely proud is our electoral support. 22% of Soweto historical, 20% in the suburbs, 22% in Alexander, and so forth. Not even Nelson Mandela in 1994 received the kind of electoral support across all South Africans. And now you will see when we present our policies at our policy conference, people are going to realize we are not here to play. We want to reunite South Africans. We want all of us to be South Africans first before we can be anything else. And we're not really standing on a fence. We are there for a free market economy where we want to drive the economy of this country. No union. I want to make it clear to the union, Red Kosatuna, they'll never have a veto right on our economic policies. We are going to drive policies that are going to create the future for our children, to drive the economy of this country. Schooling system, SATU, they are not going to be responsible for the education of our children. You know, I can go on and on, but I'm sure you're going to be at the policy conference. You will see how we're going to deal with inequality, how we're going to deal with social justice, because people must understand I did not get into politics for any other thing than to ensure that we can save my country so that one day my grandchildren can live in a better country than the one I was born and lived under.
Well, Herman Mashaba, as I was saying to somebody I was speaking to recently, South Africa's in a state at the moment, but if you look back at history, some of the best stories have been rebuilding stories. You know, and when a country gets behind a rebuilding process, that itself gives you a lot of potential for growth and development. I think it is up to every South African who is not thinking, who feels that South Africa could be better than what it is now. Make sure you register, make sure you vote next year. If you're happy with the way South Africa is going, vote for the ANC. If you're not happy with the way the ANC is running the country, vote for somebody else. That's what we've got to do in 2024. Herman Mashaba, Action SA, thank you so much for coming through. To everybody that watched, thank you so much for watching and being a loyal supporter. By now, you've heard me ask you to subscribe. I'm sure you have. Subscribe to the State of the Nation channel. We'll be bringing you more soon. Herman, thank you once again for joining us.
It's always a pleasure.